Hello, welcome to this Nelly Bite video. I am Nelly, otherwise known as Neil Simpkins. I am a Senior Solutions Architect for Wasabi based out of the UK. I quite often get asked by customers, we've just got our Wasabi storage. Can you give us a demo on a kind of walkthrough of the console, what features there are, how to set things up? So I thought I'd record it so that I could, people could watch it in their own time. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through as if I was a new customer and I've just got my Wasabi account, how I would log into it, how I would go through the various setting up the various elements within the console and getting it connected to different applications so I could start using it. So as always with Nelly Bite videos, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of my lovely face because none of you want to see that, and if you do, you're all very weird. Bear with me a second. Let me just remove that. There we go. Cool. So let's jump straight into the console walkthrough and setup demo. So all Wasabi accounts, whether they're full accounts or just trials, start with a free trial account. So you need to come to wasabi.com and you'll see the try free button up here on the right. Click that and you get a little form where you put in your information and you will get a 30-day 1 terabyte trial. As I said, even paid storage accounts need to be started with a trial. Everyone gets a trial, and then if you become a Wasabi customer, then we convert that trial into your paid account. It's worth pointing out if you want to try Cloud NAS, it's a different try free button. You actually have to come into the product page, and then you'll see a different button in the middle. You'll know you're in the right place for Cloud NAS because it'll say free trial NAS. So for the normal one, just this button up on the right, which is the URL is just wasabi.com try free. And then for Cloud NAS, into the middle, and you'll know you're in the right place because it says free trial NAS. So once you've filled in the form for whatever product you want to try, you'll get the access into the Wasabi console. And to get there is just going to the URL of console.wasabisys.com. And then when you're there, you can put in your information and get access into the console. So this is just one here I've just generated so I can do this demo. It's completely empty at the moment, no buckets, no users. We're going to go ahead in a minute and go through each of the sections. And if I gloss over something, it's because it's not really relevant, or there's another much deeper video on that subject. But we'll pretty much go through as if you're a new customer getting set up, and what you can do in the console. So the first page you get to when you log in is the dashboard. This will give you some information about your utilization, how many objects you've got, how many buckets you've got, utilization over the past 30 days. Obviously, at the moment, this is a completely empty account, so it's not showing anything in here. We also, if there's any new products or things that we think you should think about or do, then we'll put some tiles in this dashboard for you to see, as soon as you log in. So 2 tiles here, boost your resilience with object replication. So we're just telling customers about object replication. And then, we've just launched our covert copy product as well. So, a new tile here telling you all about covert copy and, what you can do with it. So that's the dashboard. I'm not going to go into the data access bits now, the buckets, policies and keys, or the users, groups and roles. We're going to go down to security and just set some of the features that you would normally set, before you start doing other activities. So first thing we'll do is security. We're logged in as the root user at the moment. We can see that if we go to settings. I can see that I'm in as the root user account that I set up. So under here, we do have, very quickly, it just tells you some of the things you've got. So how many groups you've got, how many users, policies, roles that you've got. And we've also got this nice health check over here on the right, showing you recommendations. So at the moment, there are 5 critical recommendations that I really should fix before I go ahead and start using the storage. So we're going to run down these. They're in a reasonable order anyway, and then we'll look at any other security features in the security center that we think you should do. So the first one is the multi-factor authentication. There is a direct link over here that just says fix, which will take you to what it thinks you need to fix. So the first one on the list was MFA. So we're going to do this now. I'll just grab my phone quickly and we'll add in a QR code. There we go. So I'm going to scan the code. And that's going to give me a couple of numbers. So I'll go ahead and pop these numbers in here. There's the first one. Now, I've got to wait for the second one. I'm just going to pause the video because it's got a while to run. So there we go. I've got my second code now. So I'll just come into here and 443923. Activate virtual MFA. So there we go. I've got the little pop-up box saying I've successfully activated MFA, and I know I've done it because there's no code in here anymore telling me to do it. So perfect. So and health check now. 1 out of 5 items done. So let's go back to our recommendation. So multi-user authentication. Okay. So we'll hit the fix button. So multi-user authentication allows you to add in security contacts that have to sign off activities that I specify. Now they have to currently be in the same email domain. So I'm going to go and add a security contact of just my standard. In fact, I'll do this one. neilsimpkins1@gmail.com. There we go. Now activities. So we'll come back to covert copy later on. So I'm just going to do delete account and delete bucket for now. So basically, if me, even as the root user, try and delete the storage account, or I try and delete a bucket that doesn't have immutable data in it, at the moment I could, because I don't have MUA set up. But as soon as I've done this, if I try and do any malicious activity, it will send an email to neilsimpkins1@gmail.com, and they will have to sign off on those activities. So I hit go. Everything in MUA requires the MFA code for it to be set up. So we'll just pop that in here now. Just at the end of one. There we go. We're at the other one now. 576 and send. So there we go. We've added a security contact, and we've added sent an email to neilsimpkins1@gmail.com inviting them to be a security contact within the console. So it says on here, information pending. So I'll just drop into that email address quickly into the mailbox. So here we go. I've just dropped into that mailbox, and you can see the security contact invite has come in from Wasabi, support. So we'll click on the email, and it says you're invited to be a security contact for the Wasabi root account neilsimpkins4@gmail.com. Do you accept or decline? So we'll click continue, and it will drop into the console, and then from here I will have to accept or decline the invitation to be a security contact. So there we go. So it's got to the invitation box, and now I've got two options. It runs me through the information again, and I can either decline the invite or I can accept it. So I'm going to accept it, and that will then say you've accepted the request to be a security contact. So we'll drop that box down, and then in here in the email again, you'll see that you've got the congratulations email. So it just says, congratulations, you are confirmed as a security contact for the root account neilsimpkins4@gmail.com. So there we go. That's MUA enabled. And then in the console, we'll just refresh this quickly. It doesn't auto refresh. So we've got a tick box now, invitation accepted, to sign off on those two activities. And we've also, you can see the health check now has 2 out of 5 activities that we have completed. Cool, so let's go back to our health check again. And the next one is the root user password settings. So we'll just hit the fix button. So here we can enter some things like minimum password length and prevent password reuse and auto expire, stuff like that. So let's go for minimum password length of 8. I'm just going to get rid of dash lane quickly. Pause, there we go. Auto expire passwords after. So let's go for 90 days on this. Prevent password reuse. Let's go for, so what this is a number of times a password can be reused. So we don't really want a password to be reused. So we'll just go for 1. Number of failed login attempts before user lockout, default 5. Let's keep with the default. And number of minutes to lock out the root user. Well, let's go for, so yeah, it'll take 10 minutes. If a root user is locked, then it will take 10 minutes before they can retry. We've also got prohibit passwords made up of single dictionary words or common names down the bottom, so you can enable all that or disable it. I guess most people would enable it. They don't want single dictionary words as root password settings. I'm going to leave mine there. I think that should, or do I want to, no, I will enable that actually. So there we go. So that says now I've successfully applied my root user password settings, and we can see my health check has changed and gone up to 3 out of 5. So let's go back to our recommendations, and we can see the next one is to prevent concurrent active sessions. So again, we'll go to the fix on that, and it will take us to the advanced options where some are already enabled by default. So prevent account deletion with object lock bucket. So if I've got any buckets with object lock enabled, then I wouldn't be able to delete the account anyway. Obviously MUA protects against that, but this is another line of security saying, yeah, you've got object lock buckets, so you couldn't go ahead and delete the security account. And the same thing for covert copy buckets. So if I've got any covert copy buckets, which we'll go through in a bit, but if I had some of those, then again, I wouldn't be able to delete the storage account with those covert copy buckets in place. But the one we need to set here is the prevent multiple concurrent active sessions for one user in the console. Just means a single user wouldn't be able to log on using separate browsers more than once at the same time. So we're going to enable that now. To enable this, we do need our MFA code. So we'll pop that in here, 455503, and update. Yay, there we go. So we've now got green. We're not quite there yet, 4 out of 5. But at least we're looking good. So there's one issue left to fix. So let's go back to our recommendations, and the last one is the egress monitor. So if we hit fix on this, it actually whips us down to the settings page, and you'll see the egress monitor is here. So I want to enable the notification for the egress monitor. Now what the egress monitor does, obviously with a, we make it quite difficult for ransomware attackers or anyone to scramble your data. We've got products like immutability, object lock, covert copy to stop any of the bad actors from being able to encrypt or do anything with your data, but that doesn't stop them from stealing your data. So we've got an egress monitor where you can set a threshold number, and if the daily egress goes over that number, then we will monitor you and say, hey, do you know what? You're getting a lot of egress out of this account, and it's gone over your capacity that you've assigned. So we will put a amount in here. I'm just going to go for 5 gig for fun, and then it will allow you to select a security contact. This is optional. It will automatically email the root user, but you might think, well, hang on, if the root user is on holiday, then we might want one of the security contacts to also receive the email. Then you can select them in here. So I need to again put in the MFA code. I know it's tedious, but it just stops any misconfiguration from happening. So 718355. Oh, typical. Changed as I was typing it. 357280. There we go. So we'll save that. Okay. So that's done. So we've enabled our egress monitor, and if we go back to our security settings, we'll see that the health check is now 5 out of 5. Now I'm just going to go back to the notifications, because you will have noticed that there are two others in the box, and one is object replication and the other one is covert copy. So you can also go ahead and enable these. This will let you know when object replication is started and completed, and again whether covert copy copies are started and again completed. So we'll go ahead and enable those. We will need, again, always fun, the MFA code, and as always it's just at the end, so we'll just wait. There we go, 489828. There we go, save that one. Good job. So now we've got everything that we want to be enabled enabled. So I've got the egress monitor, the object replication, and the covert copy is enabled. So we'll go back to our security and we'll just see, yep, our recommendations are all happy. There are others on here which we'll go through, but these will get ticked off as we do certain things on the buckets, you know, to do with replication, object lock, covert copy, things like that. But for now, just know that the main ones, the 5 main ones, we've got ticked in our health check. So now we've got everything happy in the health check, we'll just look at a few of the other items that don't come up in the health check but are good to look at. The first one is the session timeout. So how long do you want inactivity within the console before a user gets logged out? Currently set to 60 minutes, or you can select any time between 15 minutes and 2 hours. I'm going to leave mine at 60 minutes. That's, you know, for me, that's fine. So we will leave it there. We've done root password settings. SSO, we're not going to do that today. I don't actually have a Active Directory account that we can use, but you can go onto our documentation page and see how you can set up SSO for console users. So you can do that. Admin logging and compliance logging and credential report we're not going to do yet, because I really need to create some buckets first before I do these activities. So we will come back in a bit to the logging and monitoring. So on the next section down, settings, over here on the left. So first thing we got is account alias. So at the moment I'm logging in with neilsimkins4@gmail.com, but if I wanted to, I could just put in an alias here. So it could be Nelly4. So that basically means if I log out, I can now log back in with just Nelly4. Let's just make sure this is correct. There we go. And instead of, you know, it just speeds things up. So instead of using my email address, I can just go ahead and use the alias. We'll just drop the if I can do it in time. No, we have to wait. Bear with me. Right. 768350. And there now you can see, if we go down to settings again, the account is Nelly4. I mean, it is the root account, but we've logged in as the alias. So coming on down, update password. So this will update the root account password if you need to change that. And then vice versa, if you want to change the root account email address. And this is quite useful when someone set the account up with a person's name and then they realize that actually that's not a good idea. It should be like a, you know, an administrative account for the group or for the IT team. You can come in here and update the email address, change the email address of the root account or whatever account you're logged in as, really. But obviously we're logged in as the root, so it would change the root email address. Billing access for IAM users and roles. So by default, only the root user can see this billing portal. However, if you want to give the ability to one of the other users to view the billing portal, then you will need to come and enable that in here. Event notification, if you want event notifications going to, well, it has to go to an AWS SNS account, so you will need one of those. And then if you want that, you can come in here and connect it into with your Amazon S3 credentials, and then you can send the SNS traps to the AWS SNS service. I don't have one, so we can't configure that. Notifications we went through on the security questions, so we won't do that again. It's just the notification for the egress monitor, replication, covert copy. And terms of use, if you want to put your own terms in here. So it could be Nellie's account, go away. There we go. So when I log in, then, or when any user logs in, they will get the terms and conditions that you've set personally. So you can go ahead and set those in here. Okay, and then on the other section, the bottom three, or the middle two are used by support. So if support asks you to turn on account logging, this is where you will do that. You can just decide to enable logging for up to 60 minutes and then enable. So if there's an issue that support are trying to catch some logs on, they might tell you to come in here and enable the account logging. And then there's also a debug file. So again, if support asks you for the debug file, you can just come into here and export the debug file. So those two are really used just if support asks you to. Speed test is quite interesting for customers who want to check what kind of speed they're going to get between their site and Wasabi. Obviously, it's best to run the speed test on the server that you're actually going to be using to move the data. So if you've got a backup server and you want to see what kind of speeds you're going to get from the backup server, well, open the console on the backup server and then run the speed test. You have to copy the password into the box, hit submit, and then that will log you into the that will log you into the speed test. And then you can pick what region you want to run the speed test against. It will tell you the distance, the rough distance in miles between you and that data center. So, if I wanted to do a speed test against our Sydney data center, I know it's 10,641 miles away. I don't really want to write data into there. I'm going to pick my local DC, which is EU West 1, and then hit go, and it will just do we got an embedded Ookla service, so it will do an Ookla speed test from your site up to our data center. So you can see what kind of download you would get. Well, download's not really that important. I want to see how fast I'm going to get my data up to you, Wasabi. And my home connection obviously is not great, so I'm only looking at 108 megabits per second up. But I can take that calculation and do a rough, I can take that figure and do a rough calculation on how long it would take me to send a certain amount of data up to Wasabi. So that's the speed test, and then last but not least is the very special delete account button. So if you do want to leave the service, you can go ahead and delete the account. Now, you remember from earlier our MUA settings, one of those settings was delete account. So while you've got MUA enabled, if anybody tried to go ahead and delete the account, then it wouldn't allow them, even if they did get the MFA code and everything. They can hit delete account, but nothing would happen until those security contacts within MUA agree that the account should be deleted. So that's why MUA is a very, very important, strong security feature that everybody should be using. So that's it. We've run through all the security settings and all the standard settings. So what we'll do now is go through groups, roles, and users. So let's do users first. So completely empty at the moment, so no users. What we're going to do is go and create a user. So I'm going to create two for this demo. I'm going to create a console user for one of my staff, and I'm going to create a account user for a backup service. So let's do the backup one first of all. So I'm just going to call him backup user. There we go. And now you get two options here. Can we call him hyphen? There we go. So I've got two types of access. One is programmatic and one is console. So the backup user really won't need to, in fact, I'm not going to call it user, I'm going to call it account. There we go, backup account. It's not really a user, it's an account. So this account won't need console access. So I'm only going to give it API access. Do I need it to require MFA? Not really. It's going to be a service account, so it doesn't really need MFA. It's not going to be logging into the console. I'm not going to add it to any groups, and I'm not going to put any policies on it yet. I'm just going to create my user. Now it will now show me the secret and access key for this user. Now this is important. Once we close this window, you will not be able to get this access key, this secret key shown to you again. It is only shown to you this first time. So you can copy the keys to the clipboard, and you can also download the keys as a CSV file, which we've done there. So I shall just open a notepad quickly. Let's do this just to show you what it looks like. So those are the copied keys. So it just copies them out, access key and secret keys. I've got those copied, and I've also got them as a CSV file. So I can go ahead and close that, and we can see our user here. Again, if I click on the user, see there's no way of seeing the keys. We'll show you the access key, but there's no way of seeing that secret key again. Once you've created the user and clicked on off that box, then it's not shown, it's disappeared, it's gone. So then we will create another user. I will call this Barley. That's my dog's name. And does Barley need programmatic access? Will she be coming in at a API level? Maybe. And I will give her console access as well. So we'll just go ahead and I'm not sure. I think I sausage fingered that up a bit. So we'll do that again. I'm not going to enable MFA through yet, just purely because of the demo. It's just a bit of a pain to keep putting the MFA codes in all the time. But normally, I would enforce that all my staff accounts have MFA enabled. But just for this, I'm not going to enable it just because it's a bit of a pain to keep typing the number in. And again, I'm not going to add Barley to any groups or roles. Or policies, sorry, and I will just go ahead and create those. So again, there's the two keys. I'll copy those to the clipboard, and I'll just pop them in under here. So I'll type in Barley and put those two keys in. Top one was for the backup account. Trouble typing today, so I'll just drop those down, and then I click off this box and close. So I've got my two users there, my Barley user and my backup user. So also in this section we've got groups and roles. Now roles are used if you want to basically allow another account to have access into a bucket. That's what I generally use roles for. So if I had a completely different Wasabi account and I wanted that account to be able to access one of my buckets, I could create a role on the bucket and basically assign it to that user, and then while they're in their console they can switch roles, and they can basically assume that role, which will give them access into the bucket. So we do this if we're doing cross-account replication. So if I wanted to replicate a bucket from one Wasabi account to a bucket in a completely different Wasabi account. So you imagine a customer maybe wanted to synchronize a bucket back to a partner's Wasabi instance. Well, you would use the roles so that the partner instance could get access to the bucket. And if you have a look at my other videos, there is a video on doing a bucket synchronization or bucket replication between two different accounts. And then the other section here is groups. Groups are very simple. A group is just a set of users. You can add a set of users into a group so you can manage them collectively. So I could create a group called IT staff. No spaces allowed in group name. There we go, IT staff. Save that, and then I could come into here and I could add users into the group, and then I could maybe add a policy that I wanted all of those users to get. So I might have a policy for my IT staff. So instead of adding that policy onto each of my IT staff individually, I just create a group called IT staff and then drop all those users in here. In fact, let's just add Barley into here. And then I could go ahead and apply a policy to all of those staff users at the same time. Cool, so now we've been through our account settings, our security and all that, and we've been through our users, groups and roles. Let's go ahead, just a quick look at access keys. So I mentioned earlier when you create an account that you get a set of access keys. If you need to create more access keys, you can decide to do it from in here. So I might want to create new access keys for the root user, or I might want to create access keys for one of my sub users. So you could just come into the account keys page and, create some access keys. Also, it's good practice. So if I've got a backup account, I want to occasionally replace or refresh the keys, because just for security purposes, I don't want to use the same keys for years and years and years. So I can come in and delete the current set of access keys and create a new set, and then go into the application and just drop them in and reconnect. So you could do all of that in the access keys area. Like I said before, we only show you the access key. We never show you the secret key once you've ticked on the cross box when you're creating the keys. So just be aware that you will need to write down the access and secret keys and keep them somewhere safe in your key manager, or wherever you happen to have this safe. So apart from the dashboard, the other two sections in here are buckets and policies. Policies we're going to do in a little bit, so we'll come back to policies. So we'll concentrate on buckets. So at the moment, there are no buckets yet. So there are two buttons that say create buckets. Obviously, once we've created a bucket, this thing in the middle will disappear. So I'm going to use the one up on the top right. So first thing we're going to do is create a bucket called bucket, or for my bucket logs. Oops, no, I don't want to do that, Dashlane. I want to turn you off. So I'm going to give it a name. Now, all names with Wasabi must be unique globally, all bucket names. So if I try and type a bucket called test, that's going to tell me that that bucket name already exists. Now, I don't have a bucket called test. I haven't made any buckets yet, but some lucky person somewhere around the globe has the bucket called test. So they do have to be unique globally. So again, if I tried backups, I'm sure somebody around the world has a bucket called backups. So what I normally do, my name is Nellie Simpkins or Neil Simpkins. So I normally do NS on the front, and then give my bucket a name. Now, it must be valid DNS. So it can be, let's think, NS. Oh, bucket logs, that's the first one I was going to create. NS, I can't type today. NS bucket logs. Okay, everything must be lowercase. You'll see if you try and put a uppercase character in, it will tell you that it must be lowercase, might be valid DNS. And you can use dashes, but you cannot use underscores because it's not a valid bucket name. So I can go ns-bucket-logs. There we go. Quite happy. And then I need to select my region. So there are 16 Wasabi regions globally. You are welcome to use any of them. You're not tied to a certain area. Obviously, I'm in the UK, and if I try and write data to a bucket in Sydney or Singapore or Tokyo, Osaka, somewhere like that, then it's going to be a lot slower than writing data into my local, EU West 1 or EU West 3 data centers. So I'm going to choose EU West 1 for my logs bucket. In fact, no, I'm not, because I create most of my normal buckets in West 1, so I'm going to keep my logs separate, and I'm going to keep them in EU West 3. Now, I could go ahead and just create the bucket now by hitting the Create Bucket option, but let's just look through what the other options are. So if I want to do versioning or object lock, then I can enable those items in here. And they are just sliders. There's nothing else needs doing. They are just sliders. Bucket logging, well, this is going to be the bucket where you store bucket logs, so I don't really need to do bucket logging on this bucket, if that makes any sense. So I'm not going to do that. Replication, if I want to replicate this bucket to another region, well, not really. It's just my logs, so I'm not going to do that with this bucket. If I want to tag anything, then I can here. I'm not going to. I'm going to leave tags off for now. And then review. Yep, I'm happy with everything. I'm going to go ahead and create bucket. So there we go. Yay, well done, Neil. Nelly, you've created your first bucket. So once you've got a bucket created, you can click on the name of the bucket. That'll take you to look inside the bucket. If you had any data in the bucket, then you would be able to access that data from here. Upload it. You can also upload data. You can create folders. You can download data, which we'll come back to in a bit. We'll look inside the bucket at that level. But you'll notice the 3 dots on the end. So there are other things you can do with the bucket. You can go into its settings. You can rename the bucket. Manage the tags, covert copy, which we're going to talk about in a bit, so ignore that for now. And I can request delete on the bucket. Now remember, because of MUA, any action I do that's part of those security settings will have to go through that sign-off process. That's why it says request delete, because it will need my security contacts with the delete bucket activity to approve it. So this is where MUA is really powerful, because it just stops anyone from accidentally or maliciously deleting a bucket which doesn't have object lock on it. So if we look at the settings as well, so anything you forgot to set when you created the bucket, you can set in here. And there are also some additional items that you can do. So again, if I wanted to enable logging, I could do it here. If I wanted to enable versioning, I can do it here. If I want to look at the size of the bucket when there's data in it, I can look here. There isn't any calculations yet. They are done once a day, so it's not live. It will refresh once a day. Public access override is disabled by default. We used to have this so customers could just create their buckets and make them available publicly. We just turned that off because there's not really many reasons for it, and it's also not good security practice to have your buckets publicly accessible. So that's only turned on by contacting support, and you have to explain exactly why you want to have a bucket publicly available, and then they will enable it or disable it. And then event notifications, you will have to go into the SNS stuff down in the settings to enable event notifications. So the next section along is permissions. So this is where we could set some bucket level permissions. So maybe you want to tie a bucket down to a originating source IP address, or and basically anything you want to do that's purely just at the bucket level on the bucket using a policy, then you would do it in here. And under that is the cross-origin resource sharing. So this is basically a way for client web applications that are loaded in one domain to be able to interact with resources from another domain. So it's another JSON script that you'll need to drop in here if you want to do that. That's much too heavy for this video, so if you're interested in cores, you can just go onto our knowledge base, docs.wasabi.com, and look up cores on there, and it will tell you all about the cross-origin resource sharing. So the next section along is compliance. Now, compliance and object lock are two different things. So object lock, remember when we, let's just go back to the buckets here. When you create a bucket, I'm just going to give this one a random name. You get the option of enabling object lock here. So this object lock is where every individual object in a bucket can have its own individual retention policy. And objects can have a retention policy, or they might not have a retention policy. So that is object lock. Now, when you're working with a backup vendor, this is what they are talking about. So if they say they work with object lock, then this is where it's enabled. When you create the bucket, then you enable it here. You must do this at the time of creation. So if I want a bucket for a backup product, and I want that backup product to do immutable backups to Wasabi, then I will come in here when I create the bucket and I will enable object lock. On the bucket itself, the compliance will, if I enabled it here, it would take effect across the whole bucket. So all objects in the bucket would pick up a lock, a compliance lock, an immutable lock. This is not what you do with backup vendors, because if you do it here, if you enable it here, basically every single object that enters the bucket will just get a immutable stamp on it. And the backup application itself won't really understand what's going on, and everything will fail. So you use compliance setting if maybe I'm going to do a manual copy of some data into a bucket and I just want to make sure that that data was immutable for maybe a year, then I could come in and change the compliance settings in here. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave them off. And just on the back of that, if you do go to our documentation page, docs.wasabi.com, and type in compliance and object lock, you will see the document that talks about the differences between compliance and object lock, and then goes through what the differences actually entail and what you should be using. But compliance, remember, is for everything in the bucket. Object lock, the application will actually decide which objects get locked and for how long. So if you're working with backup products, it's object lock is the one that you require. So next tab along is object replication. So this is where if you want to synchronize a bucket or replicate a bucket to another bucket, this is where you would do that. So you can have a bucket in one region and a bucket in another data center in the same region and create a replication job between them. We're not going to do that yet because obviously we're only working on the logs bucket at the moment. So later on when I create a few more buckets, then we will go ahead and replicate one. Life cycle policies again, we'll do later on, but it's basically if I want to set a policy to delete versions of objects as they get to a certain age. So we'll look at lifecycle rules later on. Access control, this is how we used to do kind of access control into the buckets. We don't really use this anymore. This is really depleted, so you can pretty much ignore access control. It's there because some older customers, legacy customers, still have it enabled, but generally access control can be completely ignored. So next tab is the inventory configuration. So again, we'll do this later on, but it's where you can basically set a inventory report to happen daily or frequent or weekly, and it will generate a CSV form or file that basically tells you everything that's in the buckets or bucket. So again, we'll go through and create an inventory configuration later when we've got a bucket with some data in it. And then the last tab is utilization. Same as the dashboard. It will give you individual bucket information on the size of the utilization of the bucket, showing you the active data and the deleted data. So that's the items that you can set within inside the bucket itself. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and create some other buckets, but before I do that, I'm just going to create another user quickly. I shall call this one Homer, which is my other dog's name. I'm going to give Homer programmatic and console and set a password for him quickly. There you go. And not going to add groups, not going to add policies, just create him. Take my access keys again. I'm just going to drop them into my notepad, which I seem to have shut down for some reason. There we go. We don't want that. Let's go for... Okay, there we go. And oh, why aren't you clicking? There we go. Drop those in there. We'll just call that, oops, Homer, like capitals, don't we? Okay, so I've got 2 console users now and a service account called backup. So let's go ahead and create some buckets. So first one I'm going to create is going to be my backups. So again, we'll do ns backups. There we go. And I'll put this in EU West 1. And I'm going to enable versioning and object lock because I want my backups to be immutable. So I'm going to enable versioning and object lock. Logging, yes, I do want to log. My log prefix will be the bucket name, so ns backups. And my target bucket will be my logs bucket. So that means that I'm going to log all access to this bucket. So any API calls that get driven, I will get a log of everything that happens. Replication. Do I want to replicate this bucket? I could do, but I'll do that once I've created it. Not going to tag it, and we'll go ahead and create it. Now it does warn you that object lock has been enabled, so you need to make sure that your application actually supports it, which is fine. And then I'm going to create a bucket for barley, so we'll call that barley bucket, maybe. Let's see if that's okay. Yep, and I'll stick that in EU West 1 again. I'm not going to enable versioning on it. I will log it though, so I'll call this one barley bucket. So I know the prefix is there so that you know. Obviously, I'm putting everything in the same logs bucket, so I need to know that which bucket that the log actually is for. So I'll put the bucket name on the front, and then again send it to my logs bucket. And I'm going to do the same for Homer. So we'll have Homer bucket. And region EUS 1, no immutable. And again, we will log it with Homer bucket and send it to the logs bucket. Cool, so now I've got 4 buckets. I've got a bucket for barley, a bucket for Homer, and a bucket for my backups and my logs bucket, which should still be empty because we haven't written any data into any of the buckets yet. So what I'm going to show you now quickly, we've got a product called the Wasabi Explorer for cloud storage. You can download it from our docs page. If you just go to our docs.wasabi.com and type in Wasabi Explorer, then you'll get the link to either download it for Windows or for Mac. And it's a good little tool for testing that your users can actually access what you want them to, and make sure that there's other areas that you don't want them to access, and make sure that they can access those areas. So you go ahead and you add in Wasabi accounts. So when you click add, you'll see it's the only option is Wasabi, obviously. And all it asks you for is to give it a name and an access key and a secret key. So I'll just drag this over here. So let's do barley first. So I'm going to go with display name barley. And then I'm going to go and drop in the access key and the secret key that we downloaded for barley. So there we go. Test the connection. Yep, successful. Okay, done. And now I will do the same for Homer. So there we go. I've just put in Homer's details. Test the connection. Successful. Close. Okay. So I've got barley and Homer in, so I can close the accounts page now. Now over here, if I just go onto the barley account, now because we've not applied a policy to barley yet, I don't see anything. I don't see any buckets. I don't see anything, which is exactly what I wanted. And the same with Homer. there you can see nothing. If I click on one of my own, oh, not that one, that one's not working. If I click on one of my, oh, stop clicking the, there we go, my Wasabi main one, that's another account of mine. You can see, I can see all my buckets, and I can see my log files, you know, and everything. So that's how it should work. Obviously, because we haven't set Barley or Homer up with a policy yet, they can't see anything. But this is great because now I can go ahead back into the console and I can start making some policies for Homer and Barley, and also my backup account. And then I can come into the Wasabi Explorer and just test to see that I can, you know, see the buckets and only see the buckets that I want those users to be able to access. So let's talk policies. So policies are JSON scripts that allow you to do certain things. So if I look at the Wasabi administrator access, you'll see is a very, very simple JSON script that basically says allow everything, everything. So it's a you know, an administrator policy that I could drop onto a user or onto a group, and they would basically have everything. So let's just show that. So if I go onto Barley and I go onto policies and I click on the Wasabi administrator access, you'll see it's down the bottom here. There's this one's already there. The I am change password. So you know, this user is allowed to change their password, but I've given them full access. So now if I go ahead, and it does take a few seconds sometimes to work, but if I go on to Barley again and refresh, then there we go. Now I've got full access. I can see the buckets. Obviously there's nothing in the buckets, but I've got complete access on everybody's bucket because I've given Barley you know, administrator privileges basically. But I don't want that. I want Barley to only be able to access the Barley bucket. So I need to make a policy where she can only access that bucket. So I'm going to take off this administrator access, and we're going to go and create a new policy. So there's several ways that you can make a policy. You can, if you know the JSON script, then you can just go ahead and type it or copy it in. Or you can use the policy generator, which will ask you some questions and rules, and then that will make the policy for you. Now, for the editor, luckily a lot of the backup vendors will have something on their website. So Commvault has a list of the items that it requires for successful backup. Same with MSP360, same with Veeam. There's the policies for immutable and non-immutable buckets. And Cohesity, same thing again, exactly what's required for data protection. So you can generally find policies from different vendors' websites. Or you can also use a AI engine, something like ChatGPT. You can say, I want you to make a policy to allow a user called Barley access into a bucket called Barley bucket, and you can go ahead and do it that way. So just to show you that with ChatGPT, there we go. So I've just literally thrown in a statement that says, please make me an S3 IAM policy to allow a user called Barley to be able to list all the buckets and allow access into a bucket called Barley bucket. So I can hit the go button. So it will create the policy for me, and I can go ahead and copy that policy, drop it in here. I was playing with it a minute ago, so you'll see there is a policy already there. We'll write that in. It will tell you if the policy is valid, which it did. We can quickly say, yep, allow list my buckets, and allow S3 access into the Barley bucket. So we'll create a new version of that, and I've already applied it to the user. So we'll just check that. Yep, Barley bucket access is already there. So we can go ahead and open S3 browser. And then if we refresh, we can see all the buckets. And remember, it should only give me access into the Barley bucket, which we've got. We'll just create a new folder in there quickly called barley1. There we go. So we've created a folder in there, so that's quite happy. We've got access into that bucket, but if I try into one of the other buckets, it will error. I don't have access into the other buckets, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted Barley to only be able to get access into her bucket and not into Homer's or into any of the backup buckets. So again, that was just literally, using ChatGPT to get it to create the file for me really quickly. So for Homer, I'm going to create the same policy that I created for Barley, but I'm going to use the policy generator. Before I do that, I just need to come into Homer's bucket quickly, and on the permissions tab, you've got the ARN number, the Amazon resource number or name, sorry, and I can copy that and come back to the policy generator. You'll see why I wanted to copy that in a second. So I'll give it a name. I've called this one Homer Policy. And then here's where we're going to allow or deny certain actions. So I want to allow, and it's an S3 policy. And the action is list all buckets, because we need that, otherwise it won't be able to see any of the buckets. And the resource name for that will be all, so just the star. So that's fine. Then we'll come down here, bottom right, add rule. So the next rule will be to allow, and again it's an S3 type, policy type, and the action is list bucket. And then here's where we want that ARN number, and we just paste it in here for Homer bucket. And then we need one more rule, which is going to be an allow, and we'll have S3, and we'll have all actions. So we just tick this box over here that says all actions on that Homer bucket. So there we go. I can apply that. It will show me that the policy is valid, and it will show me the policy that is created, and I can go ahead and create that policy. So we can see it down here. Okay, I called the policies different names, but I can go ahead on the Homer user and down to policies, and I can just search for my Homer policy, and it will be dropped on. And again, if I open the Wasabi Explorer, here we go. So I'll just click on Barley again, and then back on Homer, and then refresh that. Should show me that Homer gets access into his bucket and not into anybody else's. There we go. Just took a second there for it to come in. So I can click on the Homer bucket and click create, and I'll make a folder called Homer in here. And if I go back to the root and I try and get to Barley's bucket, it should deny me. There we go. And again, with the backup bucket, again, it should deny me entry into there as well. So that's perfect. So that shows you how you can do user separation on the buckets by using various different policies. So we'll just go ahead now and think about our backup that we were going to do. So again, I want a policy just for my backup user, my backup account. So I've already created a policy, so I'm just going to call this my backup policy, and I can go ahead and drop. Let me just copy it from here and just drop that in. And it's the policy is valid, so I've got the settings from my backup vendor of all the items I need, and I've got my resource is my NS backups bucket that we created, and it says my policy is valid, so I can go ahead and create that policy, and I can go onto my backup user and I can just drop her in there, backup policy, and we're good to go. So I've now got my my users, and I've got my policies created, one for bucket separation between Barley and Homer, and I've got my backup account now with its, all the requirements that are required from my backup vendor to allow me to back up to that bucket. So we're going to do a couple more things now. So we talked earlier about the admin logging. We said I'll wait till I was kind of making buckets. So we're going to make a bucket for the admin logging. So it does require object lock and compliance enabled. You'll see if you try and pick a target bucket, it'll say there's no buckets ready. You need a bucket with object lock and compliance mode. So that's what we'll do. We'll go back to buckets and we'll create a bucket, and this is going to be for so ns admin logs. Really, of course there is. So we better go for just stick a number on it. I'll put that in EUS3. So we need to enable object locking. We won't bucket log, object replication no, tags no, create bucket. So yes, and then it did say we need compliance enabled. So we will go into the settings. So we need to go to our compliance and enable, let's pick 7 days, something like that. There we go. Let me type confirm. All has to be uppercase by the looks of it. There we go. And confirm. Cool. So now we've got a bucket with object lock and compliance mode. For 7 days, we should be able to go back to our admin logging and enable it and decide to send it to a bucket. There we go. Admin logs bucket. Prefix. We'll just do ns admin, something like that. There we go. So we'll save those. And then I get the ability to download the logs. Obviously, we haven't got any collected at the moment, so I can't download any. But if I did have logs saved, I could come in here and download up to 30 days worth of logs, and they can be all activity. They could just be login attempts. They could be any permission changes, SSO activities, stuff like that. So now I've enabled logging, I know that everything's going to get logged, so that I do have the ability to download those admin logs when I require them. Cool, good job. Okay, last and not least, we'll have a quick look at replication and covert copy. So let's say I'm going to pick the barley and the Homer bucket here. So at the moment, both of those buckets are in EUS1. Now, EUS1 does have 11 nines of durability on that data center. However, if I want to have a secondary copy of the data, then I can go ahead and synchronize that data to another region. You could do it to the same region, but wouldn't really make sense. So what we're going to do is create a bucket, and we're going to call it barley bucket copy. And the region, remember that the source data is in EUS1, so I'm going to pick EUS3. In fact, no, let's go abroad. Where should we go? Let's go to Milan. So we're going to create the copy bucket in Milan. I'm not going to enable versioning or object lock because they're not on the source bucket. Do I want to log this? Yes, I will. No, I won't. I've already got logging on the source bucket. And I'm not going to replicate from this bucket. I'm going to replicate to this bucket. So I don't need to create the replication job now. And I can go ahead and create the bucket. So I've got my barley bucket and I've got my barley bucket copy. So I'm going to go into the settings of barley bucket and object replication. And I'm going to create a replication job. So I'm going to replicate within the same account. We do cross-account replication. That's in another Nelly Byte video. If you want to watch that, it's too much for this video. But if you want to replicate from your account to maybe a partner's account or something else, or if you've got two accounts for some reason, then you can do cross-account replication. But this one will be in the same Wasabi account. So I'm going to give the job a name. So this will be barley rep, something like that. And the destination bucket, I can pick my barley bucket copy. And then I can decide to replicate only new objects or everything. So I'm going to go with everything. If I tick this, then it will be only objects that get written into the bucket from this point onwards. And then sync deleted objects. So that means if an object gets deleted out of the source bucket, do we delete it in the target bucket or not? Well, I'm going to leave that off. I want, if anything is deleted in the source bucket, I want it to actually remain in the target bucket as a precaution, as a copy. So we'll go ahead and create this. So what's going to happen now? We'll see that this barley replication is running, and it will start copying the data into the secondary bucket. It does take a minute or two to get going. So we'll start. There we go. It's already started. We can start seeing the data arrive in the barley bucket copy bucket. That will just crack on until it's finished, and then after that, anytime any new data gets put into the barley bucket, then we will see it get replicated to the barley bucket copy bucket. Excellent job. So now we'll take a look at covert copy. I'm not going to go too deep in the covert copy because there is another video that goes really deep into it. So I'm just going to do a quick basic overview and set it up on my Homer bucket. So for covert copy, there's a couple of things we need in place. We need that MUA set up. And remember that earlier we just had the delete account and delete bucket on there. I've gone in and I've added in the other two covert copy options and gone through the process of signing off when the email arrives. So I did that because it takes too long to show on the video. So I've already added the access covert copy bucket and delete covert copy bucket into the security activities. So they're now set there. And also to do covert copy, in fact, I'll show you something. If you try and do a covert copy on a bucket, it will tell you whether everything is in place and good or whether something needs fixing. So in this instance, we need to enable bucket versioning to allow us to do a covert copy. I didn't mention what covert copy is. Covert copy is a completely immutable hidden copy of a bucket. Only the root user has access to do anything on the covert copy bucket. That includes create the covert copy, access the covert copy, and delete the covert copy. So it's completely hidden from all other users of the system bar the root user. We're logged in as the root user at the moment, which is why we can see the covert copy items. So I want to make a covert copy of the Homer bucket. So remember, we needed to turn versioning on. So we'll just come in there and enable versioning. And then I can go back to the Homer bucket and I can go onto the covert copy tab now. It will take a second just for that versioning to say that it's enabled. There we go. Covert copy, try one more. There we go. So it's enabled. So I'm going to create a covert copy bucket. I want to put my bucket in another region, so I'll choose Paris for this region. I want all versions and I want all objects. So I go through, I do need, again, MFA. Everything to do with covert copy requires MFA. So we'll go in, if we're quick, 903, 908, there we go. And you'll see, there it is, covert copy bucket is in progress to the region EU West 2. And we can see that that's copying the data over. Now, covert copy, like I said, I'm not going to go into it too much, but basically if I want access into this bucket, it has to go through MUA. And if I try and delete the bucket or anything like that, then again, it has to go through MUA. So it's a way of making a completely hidden, immutable copy of a source bucket. Lots of interest in this at the moment, lots of uptake on it throughout our customer base. So if you want to learn more about covert copy, like I said, there is another Nelly Byte video that goes much deeper into it. I think one more thing before we stop, something that we touched on earlier, which was the life cycle. So this is if I want to set a policy to expire certain objects after a certain amount of time. So I give it a rule name, so I'll just call this in fact, Nelly Life Cycle 1, something like that. I'm not going to put, I want this to apply to all objects in the bucket, so I could do a filter to, only do certain types, maybe only, only text files or only videos or something like that, but I want it to apply to all objects in the bucket. And I want to expire current versions if they're older than 1 day, and I want to do non-concurrent versions again if they're older than 1 day. So basically what that's going to do is any object in the bucket that's older than 1 day, it's going to delete it. So it's quite a disruptive thing. Lifecycle policies, you obviously wouldn't want them, probably wouldn't want them set like this. We use it for customers who say, do you know what, we do projects and then the projects get put in a bucket, and then after a couple of years those projects could probably be deleted. So you could go in here and set a deletion date of a year or 2 years time, so you know that you're not going to keep filling up your bucket, because after a file's been in the bucket for 2 years then it would get deleted. So I can go ahead and create that rule. It only runs overnight, so it's worth remembering that. So the lifecycle policy will only run overnight. So it's you won't see anything happen instantly if you set a lifecycle policy, but then the next day you should see if any delete markers have been made. So I think that's all I'll do for now. I may increase this video later on if other features come out, or if there's anything else I think I've missed. But that was pretty much a nice little walkthrough, setting up the security at the start, going through the settings to show what they did, creating some users and some access keys, and then creating some policies to apply to those users, and then creating some buckets, uploading some data, downloading, and setting some of the features on the buckets that are available. So I hope you enjoyed this Nelly Byte video. Look forward to doing the next one.